Volcanoes. Monstrous mountains named after Vulcan, the Roman god of fire, and aptly so. Simply put, they are vents or fissures in the crust of the earth that allow hot gas and lava to spit out. 3/4 of the world's volcanoes are found along the Pacific Ring of Fire, an area surrounding the Pacific Basin, home to a staggering 452 volcanoes. Volcanoes also form at hotspots, weak points in the Earth's crust. When we imagine volcanoes, we think of Mount Vesuvius. Ancient, extinct craters come to mind, but as many as 50 to 70 eruptions occur every year. Volcanoes can cause destruction on an abominable scale. The infamous Mount Vesuvius laid waste to 2 entire cities, burying Pompeii and Herculaneum under meters of ash.
There are 2 main types of volcanoes: shield volcanoes, which are wide and flat, and composite volcanoes, which are narrow and tall. Shield volcanoes are formed at constructive boundaries, where 2 tectonic plates are moving away from each other, and hotspots, thin or weak areas in the Earth's crust. Magma and hot gases from the Earth's core escape to the surface. Because magma comes directly from the Earth's core, it is thoroughly melted. New magma is fluid and has a thin viscosity. The fluid lava flows a long distance before cooling down, forming a wide and flat shield volcano. Because trapped gases can easily escape from runny lava, there's a small buildup of pressure. Eruptions are frequent but gentle. The volcanoes in Hawaii are shield volcanoes, including the famous Kilauea volcano.
Composite volcanoes are those that make the Pacific Ring of Fire, including Mount St. Helens. They form at destructive boundaries, where a tectonic plate is pushed under another. At these boundaries, an immense amount of friction at the Earth's core melts the plate forced under. The materials of the Earth's crust melt at different temperatures. Because the materials that make magma fluid have the highest melting point, they are rarely melted. This makes the recycled magma thick and not uniform in composition. Once it reaches the surface, it travels a short distance before solidifying. Layers of thick lava cause a narrow, tall volcano to form. The thick lava traps large bubbles of hot gas, causing explosive eruptions.
A volcanic eruption is when magma and volcanic debris reach the surface. Once magma is forced out from a volcanic vent, it is called lava. There are at least 7 types of eruptions. Here are 3 main ones. Lava domes are products of the least dramatic type of eruption. They appear in composite volcanoes and is a common physical feature. When thick magma rushes to the surface without enough explosive power, it piles around the vent. The lava makes a dome shape. The most dramatic eruptions at shield volcanoes are Hawaiian eruptions. Tall jets of lava are thrown at the summit. This phenomenon is called fire fountaining and can last for hours or days. The splatter made by the jets can melt together to build hills called splatter cones. This type of eruption occurs most often at hotspot volcanoes such as Kilauea. The largest and most violent eruptions are Plinian eruptions. They occur at composite volcanoes. It was this type of eruption that destroyed the Roman towns of Pompeii and Herculaneum. The widespread dispersal of tephra, another name for volcanic debris, covered large areas, sometimes causing deadly pyroclastic flows.
Pyroclastic flows are one of the most dangerous aspects of a volcanic eruption because of its speed and destructive capabilities. Pyroclastic flows are formed by the collapse of a lava dome or the collapse of the eruption column. Pyroclastic flows often move at over 80 kilometers an hour and reach temperatures between 200 degrees Celsius and 700 degrees Celsius. The ash can bury or destroy objects and structures, and the high temperature can set combustible materials such as forests or farmlands ablaze. The composite volcano, Mount Kelud, located in East Java, Indonesia, erupted on the night of 13th of February 2014. The main volcanic hazard was severe ashfall. Roofs collapsed from the weight of ash, gravel, and tephra, causing the death of 3 people. Breathing conditions dropped drastically because of large ash clouds. The enormous amount of ash forced the closure of the airport and caused a widespread disruption of flights.
Many actions were taken before, during, and after the eruptions to mitigate loss of life and damages to property and infrastructure. Volcanology is a field of geology focused on the study of volcanoes, which greatly helps mitigation efforts. Volcanologists constantly monitor and study volcanoes for small signs that may indicate a possible eruption. Prior to the eruption of Kelud, small tremors, increased temperature, and a growing lava dome was recorded. This information is used to determine if a warning should be hoisted.
The Indonesian volcano warning system is on a scale of 1 to 4. Number 1 means no eruption in the foreseeable future. 4 means eruption possible within 24 hours. Based on the information volcanologists received concerning Mount Kelud, a level 4 warning was hoisted. The warning was broadcasted through text messages and other forms of social media. A useful prediction would announce the expected time of eruption, the parts of the volcano involved, the areas facing the highest risk, and what hazards to prepare for. Unfortunately, there were only a few hours left before the eruption. It came too late for residents to properly protect their livestock and property. Some sources say that the warning to evacuate was only raised an hour before the volcano erupted.
Ashfalls can cause roofs to collapse and a variety of widespread respiratory problems such as chronic respiratory and lung diseases, as well as asthma. To mitigate health problems, individuals should remain indoors and seal all windows and doors, and the government should educate the public to hold damp clothes to their noses and mouths or wear dust masks. In the case of severe ashfall, like the eruption of Mount Kelud, an evacuation may be the best course of action. During the fiery eruption, more than 100,000 people were moved into 172 temporary shelters, which were set up to provide food, water, and basic necessities. A 10 km radius exclusion zone was established following the eruption. Residents living within the zone were immediately evacuated and entry to the zone was strictly prohibited. Farmers who tried to return to their homes to protect their livestock were denied access due to the high risk of roofs collapsing from the weight of the falling ash and the health hazards of ash inhalation.
If the structure of the building is weak or unstable, the weight of ash and gravel on the roof can cause it to collapse. The government is responsible for establishing strict building codes, permitting only steeply sloped roofs or extremely strong roofs to prevent roof collapse caused by the accumulation of ash. In the case of Mount Kelud, Indonesian authorities did not implement these preventive measures.
Not much can be done during the eruption. However, if it's safe to go outdoors, then individuals should clean their rooftops to prevent the roofs from collapsing. Authorities should clean the roads before too much ash accumulates, blocking the roads. Another measure to undertake during the disaster is for the government to distribute dust masks to the public. During the eruption of Mount Kelud, policemen were stationed all over the city, handing out masks as people were evacuated. The Volcanology and Disaster Mitigation Center also continued to monitor the eruption and record earthquake tremors throughout the eruption.
After the eruption, action was taken to mitigate damage in the short term and long term. To deal with the eruption in the short term, Indonesian authorities made clearing roofs and roads of utmost importance. This reduced risks of roof collapses and improved access for emergency services to reach those in need. Any communications must be rebuilt as soon as possible, including any networks that may have disrupted and transportation structures and services. For the next 3 days, airports near the eruption in East Java, Yogyakarta, and Solo were closed to avoid damages to aircrafts.
A week after the eruption, 83,000 people from over 40 different villages still remained in the temporary shelters. The warning level was dropped to a level 3, and the exclusion zone was revised to a 5-kilometer radius zone, allowing some of the residents to return to their homes. To deal with long-term effects, governments usually provide monetary compensation to those affected. Temporary shelters are kept running for those whose property is too damaged for them to return to. Sometimes, governments attempt to make the volcano involved a tourist destination to counteract economic damages.
To wrap up, the Indonesian government was successful in mitigating the impacts of the eruption to a certain extent. They didn't take into account factors such as the stability of building structures to properly mitigate the impact of ashfall and the potential likelihood of the building collapsing. However, although the locals were only told to evacuate the area a few hours beforehand, the evacuation itself was quite successful, as the majority of people managed to escape the dangerous hazard.